Kai lived alone in his underground shelter on the quiet planet of Arian. The shelter was small but cozy, built from shiny metal and strong glass that let him see the rocky surface above. Most people in his colony had moved to the surface to build new homes, but Kai preferred the calm and safety of being below ground. He liked the quiet, the cool air, and the feeling that he had the whole planet to himself. One morning, Kai was fixing a small solar panel when he heard a strange scratching sound from outside the shelter. He stopped, listening carefully. It was soft at first, like tiny claws on stone. Then it grew louder, closer, and more determined. Kai frowned. Nothing usually came near his shelter. Animals on Arian were rare, and most were small and shy. He grabbed a flashlight and carefully opened the outer door. His eyes widened. Peering out from a tunnel dug into the rocky ground was a small figure. It had long ears that twitched at every sound, soft white fur with faint pink patches and eyes that shone like tiny stars. The figure's small hands clutched the edge of the tunnel, and it looked at Kai with curiosity and a little fear. The rabbit girl was unlike anything Kai had ever seen. She was not fully human, but she had human-like arms and legs. Her ears were longer than her head, and her nose twitched constantly. She made soft squeaks and pointed at the tunnel she had dug. Kai knelt down, trying to stay calm. "Hello," he said slowly.
"Who are you?"
The rabbit girl tilted her head and squeaked again. Then she gestured toward the tunnel and started hopping a little. Kai realized she was trying to show him that she had dug the tunnel herself. He raised his hands to show he meant no harm. It took a few minutes, but Kai understood something important. She was intelligent, not just a small animal or a wild creature. She understood he could talk and might help her. Kai stepped back and opened the shelter door wider. "Do you want to come inside?" he asked. The rabbit girl hesitated. Her ears twitched nervously, but her curiosity won over fear. She slowly climbed out of the tunnel and into the shelter. Kai guided her inside gently. The shelter was brighter than the tunnel, with soft lights and clean floors. The rabbit girl looked around with wide eyes, touching things carefully. She sniffed the air and squeaked softly, clearly amazed. Kai watched her closely. He noticed she seemed very fast and agile. She could jump high and move quietly, almost like she was dancing on her toes. Her small claws did not scratch the metal floor, but she could climb small walls with ease. Kai smiled. "You must be hungry," he said. He went to the small kitchen corner and grabbed some dried fruit and water. The rabbit girl's eyes lit up. She sniffed the fruit, picked it up carefully, and tasted it. She squeaked happily and waved her small hands. Kai laughed softly. "Okay, you can stay for now," he said. "But I need to know your name." The rabbit girl tilted her head again. She did not speak, but she pointed to herself and then to Kai. Kai thought for a moment. "I will call you Lumi," he said. The rabbit girl repeated the word in her way, a small squeak that sounded almost like laughter. Lumi explored the shelter slowly. She looked at the shelves, touched the walls, and even climbed onto the small bed to see the view from the window. Kai watched her with curiosity. He could see that she was smart and careful. She did not break anything and seemed interested in learning. Hours passed quickly. Kai showed her a few simple things like how to turn on lights and where the food was stored. Lumi watched carefully, her ears twitching at every sound. Sometimes she would make a small squeak and Kai would nod or smile in response. When night came, Lumi did not hide or try to leave. She sat quietly in a corner looking at Kai with her big, bright eyes. Kai felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had not expected to feel so happy about having a visitor, especially one so unusual. Kai realized something important. This little rabbit girl was not just an accidental visitor. She was curious, brave, and intelligent, and somehow she had chosen him. As Kai turned off the lights for the night, Lumi curled up in a small blanket he had given her. Her ears twitched slightly as she slept, and Kai smiled. Tomorrow would be a new day, and he knew it would be full of surprises. Kai felt excited and nervous at the same time. He did not know why Lumi had dug into his shelter or where she had come from. But he knew one thing for certain. His life on Arian was about to change forever. The next morning, Kai woke to find Lumi sitting near the small window of the shelter. The soft light from the planet's sun fell on her white fur, making her look almost like she glowed. She twitched her ears and watched Kai carefully as he prepared breakfast. Kai smiled and set down some fruit and water for her. Lumi hopped closer and sniffed the food. She picked a small piece and nibbled it carefully. Kai watched her eat, amazed at how polite and careful she was. He realized she was learning quickly and paying attention to everything he did. After breakfast, Kai decided it was time to try communicating more with Lumi. She could not speak his language, and he did not understand hers. He grabbed a small notebook and a pencil. "Okay, Lumi," he said. "We need to find a way to talk." He drew a simple picture of a sun and pointed at it. Then he drew a small cloud. Lumi tilted her head, her ears twitching, and made a soft squeak. Kai laughed softly. "Yes, the weather. That's smart." He drew more pictures, a bowl for food, a cup for water, and a small bed. Lumi looked at each drawing and pointed to the real objects in the shelter. She squeaked happily when she got each one right. Kai realized she could understand symbols. Kai drew a picture of a tunnel and pointed at Lumi. She squeaked and hopped in small circles. She was showing him that she liked digging tunnels. Kai nodded. He could see she wanted to share her world with him. They spent the morning learning this way. Kai drew objects, actions, and ideas. Lumi responded with gestures, squeaks, and small drawings of her own. Kai noticed she could copy shapes quickly. She even drew a simple map of her tunnel outside the shelter. Kai could not read all of it, but he understood she had explored and planned her tunnels carefully. Kai decided to give her a small area of the shelter to play and dig safely. He brought out soft clay and small blocks. Lumi's eyes lit up. She immediately began digging little holes and making tunnels in the clay. Kai watched her work. Her movements were quick and precise. He could see her mind at work, planning and building. After a while, Lumi stopped and squeaked, pointing at Kai. He guessed she wanted to show him something important. She led him to a corner of the shelter and tapped on a wall. Kai looked carefully and noticed a small crack in the metal panel. Lumi pointed at it, then at herself, and squeaked again. Kai understood. She was showing him she could dig tunnels anywhere if she wanted. He smiled and shook his head. "Not here," he said kindly. "We will make your own space." Kai made a small digging box filled with soft soil and clay. Lumi's ears twitched with joy. She jumped in and started digging happily. Kai laughed. He had never seen anyone enjoy digging as much as she did. She created little tunnels, connected them, and even hid small objects for fun. Kai realized that Lumi was not just clever. She was creative. She was curious about everything and wanted to explore and understand her surroundings. Her mind worked in ways Kai had never seen before. As the day passed, Kai learned more about Lumi. She was playful, careful, and surprisingly brave. When he reached for a tool, she watched his hand and tried to use a small stick herself. She did not succeed at first, but she kept trying until she could move the stick in the same way Kai did. Kai felt a strange happiness. Lumi was teaching him patience, creativity, and joy. He had spent a long time alone in the shelter, and he had almost forgotten how exciting it could be to share discoveries with someone else. By evening, Kai and Lumi had created a small routine. He would draw pictures or show her tools, and she would respond with gestures, squeaks, or small tunnels. They learned each other's habits and started understanding feelings, not just words. When Kai was happy, Lumi twitched her ears and made a cheerful squeak. When he was confused, she came close and touched his hand gently. Kai realized that communication was more than speaking. It was about attention, patience, and understanding. Lumi was teaching him a new way to connect with another being. When night fell, Lumi curled up in her small blanket again. Kai sat nearby, thinking about how much he had learned in one day. He had a visitor, a friend, and a teacher all at once. He knew tomorrow would bring more discoveries, and he could not wait. Kai switched off the lights, leaving a small lamp glowing near Lumi. Her ears twitched in the soft light as she slept, and Kai felt a deep sense of hope. He was no longer alone. He had Lumi, and together they would explore the mysteries of the planet, learning from each other every day. Kai woke early the next morning. The soft light of Arian's twin suns filtered into his shelter through the small glass panels. Lumi was already awake. She was hopping around the shelter, her long ears twitching with curiosity. Her small feet made barely a sound on the metal floor. Kai watched her with amusement. She was exploring every corner. She poked at a pile of tools, sniffed the books on the shelves, and even tried to climb a small ladder that led to a storage loft. Each time she attempted something, her bright eyes sparkled with excitement. "Careful," Kai said, stepping closer. "You don't want to fall." Lumi stopped for a moment, tilted her head, and then squeaked softly. She jumped back down and began examining the floor instead. Kai laughed quietly. He realized she had her own way of learning and exploring. She did not need him to guide her constantly. As the days passed, Lumi became more comfortable in the shelter. She learned where the food was kept and how to use simple containers. She even figured out how to open a small water dispenser. Kai watched in amazement as she moved with skill and intelligence. She did not just survive in the shelter, she adapted to it. One morning, Kai noticed that Lumi had started digging tiny tunnels inside the shelter. She made small passages that connected different corners of the rooms. At first, Kai was worried she might damage something, but the tunnels were neat and careful. They did not harm anything important. In fact, they added a playful and unique touch to the shelter. "You like tunnels, don't you?" Kai said with a smile. Lumi squeaked happily and twitched her nose. She ran through her small tunnel several times, then paused and looked at Kai as if to say, "Look what I made." Kai realized something wonderful. Lumi was not only intelligent but also creative. She could take a simple space and make it her own. Her tunnels were her way of feeling safe and expressing herself. He felt a warmth in his heart seeing how she could make a place feel alive. They started spending more time together. Kai showed Lumi simple things, like how to turn on the small heater or how to check the energy meters. Lumi was a fast learner. She did not understand words completely, but she watched carefully, mimicked Kai's movements, and tried new things. Kai noticed that she had a clever mind. She could solve small problems on her own. One afternoon, Kai brought out a small garden kit. He had always wanted to grow plants in the shelter, but it required extra care. Lumi watched him plant tiny green shoots in the soil. She touched the leaves gently and squeaked softly. Then she started helping. She carried small pots, moved soil with her tiny claws, and even arranged the plants in neat rows. Kai smiled. Together, they were creating a small indoor garden. The garden became a special place. Lumi loved hopping between the plants, sniffing the flowers and sitting quietly in the sunlight that streamed through the glass panels. Kai loved watching her. Her presence brought life and energy to the shelter. He had spent years alone, and now he realized how much he had missed having a companion. Even the simple routines became joyful. Lumi would help Kai clean the shelter in her own way, moving small items and sweeping lightly with her paws. At night, she would curl up in her small corner, sometimes stretching her long ears over her face and sometimes peeking curiously at Kai as he worked or read. Kai started talking to her more. He shared stories about his life on Arian, about the colony, and about his dreams for the future. Lumi did not understand every word, but she listened attentively. Her bright eyes followed him, her ears twitching with interest. Sometimes she would squeak or make small gestures, and Kai felt she was responding in her own way. The shelter, which had once felt quiet and empty, now felt alive. Lumi's energy, curiosity, and creativity had changed the space completely. Kai realized that it was no longer just a place to stay safe. It was a home full of life, learning, and friendship. By evening, the two of them sat together near the small garden. Lumi curled up on a soft blanket while Kai watched the tiny green shoots sway gently in the artificial light. He felt happy in a way he had not felt for a long time. The rabbit girl who had dug a tunnel into his shelter had brought warmth, curiosity, and joy into his life. Kai smiled at Lumi. "You make this place better," he said softly. Lumi twitched her nose and squeaked as if she understood. Kai knew that life on Arian would never be the same. He was no longer alone, and he realized that having a friend, even an unusual one, could make every day brighter. Lumi had chosen to stay, and he had chosen to welcome her. Together, they had turned a lonely shelter into a place full of hope, creativity, and friendship, and for Kai, that was just the beginning. The morning was calm, and Kai was checking the energy meters when the small alarm on his control panel beeped softly. He frowned and leaned closer. A weather report from the colony on the surface flashed on the screen. A large storm was approaching Arian. The winds would be strong, and the dust clouds could block the sunlight for several hours. Kai immediately thought of Lumi. He knew that the rabbit girl, with her sensitive ears and small body, might be frightened by the loud noises and strong winds outside. "Lumi," he called gently. The rabbit girl was hopping around the shelter, inspecting her tunnels and rearranging small items she had organized yesterday. Her ears twitched at his voice and she ran toward him. "There's a storm coming," Kai said slowly, pointing at the screen. Lumi tilted her head, squeaked softly, and twitched her nose. Kai realized she did not understand the words completely. He needed to show her what would happen. He led her to the window. Outside, the sky was still calm, but in the distance, dark clouds were forming. The wind was picking up slowly. Kai tapped the glass and gestured toward the clouds. Lumi squeaked again and pressed her small paws against the glass, watching intently. Kai pointed to the shelter floor, then made a gesture of curling up and staying safe. Lumi seemed to understand. She twitched her ears and hopped toward her corner. Kai went to prepare a safe space for her. He moved blankets to create a small nest and added a few pillows. Lumi climbed in and sniffed each blanket carefully before settling down. As the storm approached, the winds howled outside. Dust and small stones hit the shelter walls. Kai noticed Lumi's ears twitching nervously, and her small body shaking slightly. She squeaked softly and tried to move closer to Kai. "Don't worry," Kai said calmly. "The shelter is strong. We are safe here." He sat next to her and stroked her soft fur. Lumi relaxed slightly but kept her ears alert. The storm grew louder. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by distant rumbles. Lumi's eyes widened and she squeaked again. Kai realized she had never experienced a storm like this before. He decided to keep her busy and calm. He pointed to the small garden. "Look," he said, picking up a tiny pot. He showed her how to move it gently from one place to another. Lumi watched closely, then hopped up and tried herself. She squeaked happily when she managed it correctly. For the next hour, Kai and Lumi worked together. They moved small pots, checked the water dispenser, and even rearranged a few shelves to make the shelter feel safer. Lumi's ears twitched constantly, but she seemed more confident as she followed Kai's lead. Kai noticed that the storm had a rhythm. The wind would roar for a few minutes, then calm slightly before picking up again. He timed their activities to the quieter moments. Lumi began to anticipate the louder gusts, pressing herself into her nest or curling up near Kai. By late afternoon, the storm reached its peak. Dust swirled around the outside of the shelter, and the walls shuddered slightly under the pressure. Kai stayed close to Lumi, talking softly to her. "We are almost through it," he said. Lumi squeaked softly in response, her ears still twitching but calmer than before. Hours passed. Slowly, the wind began to die down. The clouds moved away, and a faint golden light from Arion's twin suns appeared again. Lumi poked her head out of her nest and looked around. She squeaked happily and twitched her nose, clearly relieved that the storm was over. Kai smiled. "See, I told you we would be safe," he said. Lumi hopped toward him and pressed gently against his side. Her way of showing trust and gratitude made Kai feel warm inside. After the storm, the shelter looked a little messy, but everything was intact. Lumi began exploring again, checking her tunnels in the small garden. She squeaked softly as if saying, "I survived. We are okay." Kai looked at her and realized something important. The storm had been frightening, but it also showed the strength of their bond. Lumi had trusted him and he had guided her safely. Together, they had handled a challenge that could have been very difficult for either of them alone. That night, Kai and Lumi sat near the small garden, listening to the distant sounds of the planet returning to calm. Lumi curled up in her nest, her ears twitching softly as she fell asleep. Kai watched her and smiled. He knew that life with Lumi would always bring new surprises, adventures and learning experiences. The storm had passed, but the lessons it brought stayed with Kai. He understood that caring for Lumi was not just about keeping her safe. It was about learning together, understanding each other, and building a bond that made both their lives brighter. Kai turned off the lights and sat quietly. Lumi was asleep, but her presence made the shelter feel alive. Kai felt a sense of peace and happiness he had not known before. He realized that no matter what challenges came, he and Lumi could face them together. And in that moment, Kai knew that his life on Arion was changing in ways he had never imagined. The morning sun filled Kai's shelter with soft light. Lumi was already awake, hopping around her tunnels and inspecting the small garden. Kai watched her carefully. She had grown more confident since the storm, but today she seemed unusually restless. Her ears twitched constantly, and she kept looking at a small storage corner of the shelter that held old maps and equipment. Kai noticed her curiosity and decided to investigate. He had kept these old maps for years. They showed parts of Arion's underground systems, the ancient tunnels, caves, and hidden chambers that few humans had explored. Most of the colony had ignored them, preferring life on the surface. "Lumi," Kai said gently, pointing to the maps. She froze for a moment, then hopped closer. Her eyes widened when she saw the drawings. She squeaked softly and pressed her small paws against the map, pointing at one of the tunnels with excitement. Kai leaned in and looked carefully. The tunnel Lumi pointed to was deep underground. Its shape was unusual. It did not match any human-built tunnels he had seen. Something about it seemed familiar to her. Kai realized that this tunnel might be connected to her home wherever she had come from. He studied her closely. Lumi began drawing small shapes in the dust on the floor, scratching carefully with her claws. She made lines that connected circles and little marks that looked like plants and strange creatures. Kai watched in amazement. She was trying to communicate memories. He could see images of tunnels full of roots, glowing crystals, and small creatures that seemed to live in harmony with the underground world. Lumi's bright eyes reflected a mixture of joy and longing. Kai touched her shoulder gently. "You want to go back?" he asked. Lumi squeaked softly and shook her head. She wanted to stay, but she also wanted him to understand her story. Kai smiled. "You don't have to leave," he said, "but you can show me where you came from." Over the next few hours, Lumi continued her drawings and gestures. She pointed at the old maps, then tapped her chest and twitched her ears. Kai realized that she was showing him the layout of her home. She had lived in tunnels similar to the ones she had dug inside his shelter. She had explored underground chambers, collected small plants, and lived among creatures unlike any humans had seen. Kai felt a mix of wonder and excitement. He had studied Aryan for years, but he had never encountered an intelligent native species. Lumi was not just a curious visitor. She was a bridge between the human colony and the underground world of Aryan. To help her explain more, Kai decided to create a small model of the tunnels using blocks, soil, and small objects from the shelter. Lumi immediately understood. She hopped around the model, rearranging the pieces, digging tiny paths, and showing how her tunnels connected to chambers and hidden spaces. Kai watched closely. Every movement she made was precise. She pointed at certain areas and squeaked softly, as if naming the places in her memory. He could see her attachment to the underground world. Even though she had chosen to come to his shelter, she carried her home in her heart. Kai realized something important. Lumi's digging into his shelter was not just curiosity. It was instinct. She was searching for a safe place that reminded her of home. Her intelligence and resourcefulness allowed her to adapt, but her heart still connected to the tunnels she had known before. By evening, Kai had recorded the drawings and built a detailed map with Lumi's guidance. It showed the tunnels inside the shelter, the underground pathways she remembered, and the hidden chambers she had explored. Kai looked at her and smiled. "You have a wonderful home," he said softly. Lumi squeaked happily and pressed her small paw against his hand. She did not need words to show that she trusted him completely. That night, Kai thought about the possibilities. If Lumi could survive and thrive underground, maybe humans could learn from her. Maybe the colony could explore Aryan's underground world safely with her guidance. Lumi was not just a friend. She was a teacher. She had knowledge humans did not have, and her intelligence and creativity could help the colony in ways Kai had never imagined. Lumi curled up in her nest, her ears twitching as she slept. Kai watched her for a moment, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had discovered something extraordinary, a bridge between two worlds. For the first time, he felt that the isolation of the shelter was no longer lonely. He had Lumi, and together they could explore, learn, and create new possibilities. Aryan was no longer just a quiet planet with a surface colony. It was a world full of hidden wonders waiting to be understood. Kai smiled as he turned off the lights. Tomorrow would be another day of exploration. With Lumi by his side, he knew he was ready to uncover the secrets of her world and share the adventure. The next morning, Kai woke to the sound of soft scratching. Lumi was already busy in the shelter, hopping between her tunnels and rearranging small objects. Her ears twitched with excitement. Kai smiled. She seemed more energetic than ever. "Good morning, Lumi," he said softly. She squeaked happily in response and twitched her nose. Kai noticed that her curiosity was focused on the small tools and materials he had kept in a corner of the shelter. He had been thinking about expanding the shelter. After the storm and the discovery of Lumi's underground memories, He realized that their small space could be improved. With Lumi's digging ability and his engineering knowledge, they could create tunnels, storage areas, and even a small indoor garden that was more organized and accessible. "Do you want to help me?" Kai asked. Lumi squeaked and hopped toward the corner where he had laid out materials: small metal panels, soil, and blocks. She tapped each item carefully, showing she understood they would be used in the project. Kai began explaining what they would do, using gestures and simple words. He pointed to the walls and floors, showing where they could create new tunnels and storage areas. Lumi watched carefully, her eyes bright with interest. She then hopped over to a small metal panel and began digging a tiny tunnel beneath it. Kai smiled. Her instincts were perfect for this work. Together, they started their project. Kai measured spaces, moved small panels, and showed Lumi how to reinforce the tunnels to make them safe. Lumi dug with precision, creating new paths that connected different rooms in the shelter. Her long ears twitched as she worked, and she squeaked softly every time she found a clever way to solve a problem. Kai noticed that their skills complemented each other perfectly. His careful planning and understanding of structure allowed them to build safely, while Lumi's natural digging ability and creativity made the tunnels efficient and interesting. Some tunnels twisted and curved in ways Kai would not have imagined, but they worked perfectly. After a few hours, they paused near the small garden. Kai showed Lumi how to rearrange the plants to make more space for new pots and soil. Lumi hopped between the plants, moving them carefully with her paws. She seemed to understand exactly what Kai wanted, even without words. Together, they created a garden that was larger, more organized and full of life. Kai realized how much he had learned from Lumi. Her approach to space, tunnels, and movement was different from his, but it was brilliant. She thought in 3 dimensions, using angles, curves, and small spaces that he would have ignored. Lumi had a natural sense of design that Kai could only admire. By evening, the shelter had transformed. The tunnels were neat and safe, the storage areas organized, and the garden thriving. Kai stepped back and admired their work. Lumi squeaked happily and hopped through the tunnels she had created, as if showing off her accomplishments. Kai knelt down and patted her gently. "We make a great team," he said. Lumi squeaked softly, pressing her small paw against his hand. Kai felt a deep sense of joy. He had never expected that a small rabbit girl could change his life so completely. The two of them spent the next few days testing the new tunnels and areas. Lumi would hop through the paths, exploring and finding new ways to improve them. Kai would watch and take notes, making adjustments to make everything safer and more efficient. They worked side by side, learning from each other and discovering new possibilities. One afternoon, Kai decided to add a small observation area at the end of one tunnel. It had a clear panel that let them see the surface of Orion and the sky above. Lumi was fascinated. She pressed her paws against the glass and twitched her ears at the view. Kai watched her and smiled. She was curious about the world beyond the shelter, just as he had been when he first arrived. Kai realized that their partnership had changed more than just the shelter. Lumi had taught him to see differently, to approach problems with creativity and flexibility. In turn, he had taught her to use tools, understand safety, and work together to achieve bigger goals. That night, Kai and Lumi sat near the small garden, watching the twin suns set. Lumi curled up in her nest, her ears twitching softly, while Kai leaned against the wall and reflected on their progress. The shelter was no longer just a place to live. It was a home, a laboratory, a playground, and a symbol of teamwork and friendship. Kai smiled at Lumi, who peeked at him with bright eyes. He knew that together they could face any challenge, explore any mystery, and build a life that combined human ingenuity and Lumi's natural talents. The shelter had become a place of growth, learning, and wonder. For Kai, the discovery was clear. Life on Arion was not only about survival. It was about creativity, collaboration, and the joy of sharing it with a friend who was unlike anyone he had ever known. Lumi had dug a tunnel into his shelter, but she had also dug into his heart, showing him a world full of possibility, friendship, and hope. The morning on Arion was calm. Kai woke early and stretched, listening to the soft hum of the shelter's systems. Lumi was already awake, hopping through her tunnels and checking every corner as if making sure everything was in order. Kai smiled at her energy. For weeks they had worked together, improving the shelter, exploring tunnels, and building a garden. It had become more than just a place to live. It was a home full of life, learning, and friendship. Today, Kai sensed something different in the air. A small signal alert beeped on his control panel. It was from the colony on the surface. The message was simple. A few officials were curious about unusual activity underground near Kai's shelter. They were coming to investigate. Kai felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. He knew Lumi might be frightened by strangers. He crouched beside her nest. "Lumi, we will have visitors soon," he said softly. She twitched her ears and squeaked. He gently stroked her fur. "It's okay. They are friendly. I will be with you." Soon, a small team arrived at the shelter entrance. They wore bright suits and helmets and carried tools to examine the structure. Kai opened the door and greeted them. "Welcome," he said. "Come in and see what we have here." The officials stepped inside, eyes widening at the transformed shelter. The tunnels were neatly connected. The garden thrived with green plants, and small creative spaces showed careful planning. Lumi watched from her nest, ears twitching nervously, but Kai stayed close to her side. Kai led the visitors through the shelter. He showed them the tunnels, explaining how Lumi had helped design them. He gestured toward her small garden, demonstrating how she had assisted in arranging and caring for the plants. Lumi squeaked softly and hopped a little closer to Kai, clearly curious about the humans. The officials were amazed. They had never seen a native species of Aryan work so cleverly with humans. They observed Lumi's tunnels, her careful movements, and her quick learning. Kai explained that Lumi had helped expand the shelter, organize the space, and create a safe and efficient environment. One official knelt near Lumi. "She is remarkable," they said softly. Lumi tilted her head, twitched her nose, and squeaked in response. Kai smiled. She was shy but curious, observing the humans with bright eyes. Kai guided the visitors to the observation area at the end of one tunnel. From there, they could see the surface and the surrounding landscape. The officials nodded with approval. "This is an excellent example of teamwork between humans and Aryans' native life," one said. Kai felt proud. Lumi had chosen to stay with him, and together they had created something extraordinary. The shelter was not only safe and comfortable, but also showed the possibilities of collaboration and understanding between species. After exploring the shelter, the officials asked Kai about the tunnels and the design. He explained how he and Lumi had combined human engineering and her natural abilities to create a safe, functional, and creative home. Lumi demonstrated some of her digging skills, carefully moving small objects through her tunnels. The officials watched in wonder. Kai realized that Lumi was not just a companion. She was a teacher, showing humans new ways to think about space, movement, and problem-solving. He could see their interest and excitement. He felt a warm sense of pride and happiness. As the visit ended, the officials thanked Kai and praised Lumi. "This is a great step for the colony," one said. "We can learn from this and explore the underground safely with her guidance." Lumi squeaked softly, as if she understood she was helping in her own special way. After the visitors left, Kai closed the door and looked at Lumi. "You see," he said, "everyone loves what we built together." Lumi hopped up and pressed her small paw against his hand. Kai laughed softly. Her trust and affection made him feel that all the work had been worthwhile. That evening, Kai and Lumi sat near the garden, watching the twin suns set. The tunnels glowed softly in the light, and the small plants swayed gently. Lumi curled up in her nest, her ears twitching as she relaxed. Kai felt peaceful. He thought about how life had changed since Lumi dug into his shelter. She had brought curiosity, creativity, and joy. She had helped him see the world in a new way, combining human intelligence with her natural talents. Together they had built more than tunnels and gardens. They had built trust, friendship, and a new beginning for humans in Aryans' native life. Kai smiled at Lumi, who peeked at him with bright eyes. He knew that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. Aryan was no longer just a quiet planet. It was full of possibilities, friendships, and discoveries waiting to be explored. Kai leaned back and looked around their shelter. Lumi had not only stayed, she had transformed his life. And as the stars began to appear above the planet, Kai knew that this was just the beginning of a long and wonderful adventure. The shelter was alive. The friendship was strong, and a new future was waiting for them both. Kai felt grateful, happy, and ready for whatever came next. With Lumi by his side, life on Arion was brighter, fuller, and filled with hope.